Waiters, have you ever seen a first date completely backfire? I used to work at a pizza restaurant and was serving this guy who was obviously being stood up. He'd made a reservation for 2 and arrived 10 minutes early wearing a nice button-up shirt and too much cologne. He kept checking his phone and glancing at the door every time it opened. My heart went out to him because I'd been there before. After 30 minutes, he finally ordered a large pepperoni pizza. He was polite about it, but I could see the disappointment in his eyes. He kept his phone face up on the table, and I noticed he'd sent several texts that hadn't been replied to. The other servers were whispering about him at the station. 20 minutes later, I brought out his pizza and placed it in front of him. He didn't even unfold his napkin. Other customers were giving him sympathetic looks as they ate their own meals with friends and families. I kept refilling his water glass just to check on him. He'd give me these forced smiles and say he was fine, but we both knew he wasn't. The pizza sat there getting cold while he scrolled through his phone. I wanted to say something comforting, but didn't know what would help. About 15 minutes later, he finally picked up a slice and took a small bite. By this point, he'd been sitting alone for over an hour, and the dinner rush was starting. After an hour and a half, he asked for the check and a to-go box. He'd only eaten 2 slices and looked defeated. As he was carefully placing the remaining pizza in the box, one of our servers named Melissa decided to take her break. Instead of sitting in the back like usual, she walked over to his table. She slid into the booth across from him and started talking. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but his face lit up for the first time all evening. Melissa was pretty and friendly and seemed genuinely interested in whatever story he was telling. He even laughed at something she said. They sat together for another 20 minutes. He offered her some pizza, and she actually took a slice. They were leaning toward each other across the table, and he'd completely forgotten about his phone. Other servers were nudging me and pointing at them. It was like watching a romantic comedy unfold. I was clearing a nearby table when the front door burst open. A woman with 3 kids stormed into the restaurant looking furious. The kids looked young, maybe between 5 and 10 years old. They were wearing pajamas, and the youngest was carrying a stuffed animal. The woman scanned the dining room until her eyes locked on the man's table. She marched over with the kids trailing behind her. The whole restaurant went quiet as she reached his booth where he was still sitting with Melissa. His face went from happy to terrified in about 2 seconds. He started to stand up, but she was already yelling, "This is what you're doing while your kids are starving?" The kids stood behind their mother looking confused and upset. The middle one was crying while the oldest stared at their father with betrayal written across her face. Melissa had shrunk back in the booth trying to disappear. Every customer and employee was frozen watching this family drama explode. The man tried to stammer out an explanation, but his wife wasn't having it. She pointed at the pizza box and then at Melissa. The pieces were falling into place for everyone watching. This wasn't a date who'd stood him up. This was a married man who'd lied to his family to meet someone else. His wife's voice cracked as she continued. "You told me you had to work late. You said there was an emergency meeting. I had to use the last of our grocery money for gas to come find you because the kids haven't eaten dinner. And you're here on a date?" The youngest kid tugged on their mom's shirt, asking if they could have some of Daddy's pizza. That broke something in the woman. She started crying while still yelling about bills and responsibilities and broken trust. The man kept trying to explain that it wasn't what it looked like, but nobody believed him. Melissa finally found her voice and tried to leave, but the wife blocked her path. She wanted to know how long this had been going on. How many times had they met up while she was home with 3 kids? The tension was unbearable, and my manager was heading over to intervene. That's when the man said something that changed everything. He looked at his wife with tears in his eyes and spoke just loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "She's not my date. She's my sister. The one you made me cut off 5 years ago." Everyone's eyes burst open. Full story on channel linked below.